quickly. Settle down.
The American fighting forces in South Vietnam faced a host of challenges from a lethal foe, ranging from a hostile environment of mountains and valleys with triple canopy jungles to flooded rice paddies. And then there was the singular challenge American soldiers and sailors faced in the rivers, canals, swamps, and marshes of the Mekong Delta in southernmost South Vietnam. Eventually, the soldiers and sailors would adapt to the formidable environment and would conduct a wide range of operations in the Delta throughout their involvement in Vietnam. The Mekong River, some 2,600 miles in length, is the 12th largest river in the world and the 7th longest river in Asia. From its headwaters high in eastern Tibet, the Mekong emerges at around 16,400 feet above sea level on the Tibet Plateau, before passing through China, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. During the war in Vietnam, the Mekong River formed a permanent upstream and downstream highway that could never be blocked, and through which much American and Vietnamese blood flowed during the war. The Mekong River Delta of the downstream branches contains approximately 1/4 of the landmass of South Vietnam and 1/2 of the population. It consists of some of the most productive rice-growing areas on Earth. It is no surprise that by the summer of 1966, 1/3 of all Viet Cong assaults took place in the Delta region. As a result, the amount of rice reaching Saigon dropped by 25% between 1963 and 1966, causing the importation of rice to sustain the population. With neither the agricultural produce from the region nor the support of the population residing there, the government of South Vietnam would not last much longer. The U.S. military and its allies were forced to come up with a solution. When most people think of the Vietnam War, they visualize a helicopter war, with images of troops and supplies delivered into landing zones or fire bases. Almost as important was the Riverine War, fought along the Mekong River and other water courses that crisscrossed Vietnam. Geographical and organizational challenges meant that all the branches of the U.S. military and other nations fought a cat-and-mouse war along the water. The Mekong River was just as important as a logistical lifeline as the Ho Chi Minh Trail. The communist Vietnamese used vessels of all sizes to move troops and supplies along the river into South Vietnam from Cambodia, sometimes right under the noses of the Allies. The Viet Cong controlled much of the population and trade, from the Himalayas all the way to the region surrounding Saigon. They did it shrewdly, utilizing camps hidden in the jungles and mangrove swamps along the banks of the Mekong and its thousands of branches. Originally christened the Mekong Delta Mobile Afloat Force, the Brown Water Flotilla was renamed the Mobile Riverine Force, MRF. But to most who served along the Mekong, the entire operation was normally called simply the Riverine War. A cartoon of the Riverine War is portrayed in the movie Apocalypse Now as the only popular view of these combined operations. The film, however, does show the use of gunboats, troop carriers, and helicopter gunships to attack a Viet Cong-controlled village. From tiny armed patrol boats to small ocean-going ships operating in the coastal bays, a wide variety of vessels patrolled, searched, and fought through ambushes and amphibious assaults. Most of the boats used were either converted from World War II landing craft or designed and custom-built to fight this war. Even barracks and repair shops were built on barges instead of using docks or shore facilities. It was impossible to maintain the few paved roads in the area during combat, and there was always the mud that accompanied the annual monsoon season from April to October. And so, water transport was the only reliable means of moving around the region. The U.S. Navy has a long history of supporting combat along rivers and lakes, especially during the Civil War. Operating inland, these forces are historically referred to as the Brown Water Navy. Using many of the techniques of the earlier French colonial patrols, the U.S. Navy adopted new technology to fight a guerrilla war on and under the water. Centuries of stealth, learned from smuggling and piracy during the patrols of the Chinese, Japanese, French, and others, was adapted by the Viet Cong to operate many of their supply and troop buildups for the southern half of South Vietnam. The U.S. Marine Corps was responsible for the extreme northern sector of South Vietnam along the so-called demilitarized zone border with North Vietnam. Therefore, the Navy found itself short of Marines for amphibious operations in the south. In fact, the Mekong River and the capital Saigon were part of both the 3rd Corps and 4th Corps sectors of the U.S. Army. To solve this shortage, most of the 9th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army was placed under the operational control of the Navy to serve as temporary amphibious landing troops, to assault from landing craft, and serve as quick reaction forces from floating barracks or airstrips. Troop carrier helicopters and gunships, as well as artillery deployed on barges, provided immediate transport and heavy firepower for the floating portion of the Riverine forces. Tiny landing platforms added to small troops boats allowed for the transfer of supplies and casualties when delivery and pickup couldn't wait for a dock. The integration of two different military cultures caused constant headaches, but the leaders and troops on the ground quickly figured out what each other needed. With addition of close air support and reconnaissance provided by the U.S. Air Force, joint cooperation had reached its zenith by the time of the Tet Offensive of 1968. Entire classes of vessels were mixed for different operations. Small patrol boats with a crew of 4 could go most anywhere there was a few feet of water. Using machine guns and specially adapted mortars, these boats could patrol, search sampans and shorelines, and escort flotillas of larger vessels while putting out a lot of firepower. The swift boats were a larger version of these that could take on a Viet Cong stronghold if required. They were armed a lot like the PT boats of World War II, without the torpedoes. Larger boats with protective armor and bigger guns were called monitors, much like those of the Union Navy during the Civil War. Even high-pressure flamethrowers were added to a few of these to create river dragons. Many of the thousands of small amphibious assault craft used on the beaches of D-Day during World War II were modified to provide protection, firepower, and even repair and medical facilities afloat. The variety of vessels used was endless, depending upon what was needed to keep everything afloat on the river. For a typical deliberate assault along the Mekong River, artillery was towed on barges to within easy range of the objective. Close air support pounded the target and shifted with the artillery fire to isolate the enemy position. Swift boats and monitors came in close to fire at close range to keep the defenders busy while troops made an assault landing. U.S. Army or South Vietnamese Marines landed from helicopters just inland to prevent escape or reinforcement, a waterborne version of the classic hammer and anvil desired by U.S. operations. Stealth and speed were critical to the success of destroying Viet Cong facilities and to prevent having to chase down the survivors through the swamps and mud of the Delta. Because of the various service branches and nationalities involved, these riverine assaults became the most complicated missions of the Vietnam War.
The U.S. Navy was critical along the coastline in delivering forces, interdicting supplies, and also doing snatch and grab or other attacks, riverine attacks along the Mekong River.
The special operators carried a great deal of firepower for their size.
For our first mission, they gave us those camouflage Erdrol fatigues, which looked very nice for the first day. We were equipped fairly well. The colonels that watched us go overlooked certain things like the weapon choices that some of us made. Many of us preferred AK-47s and Chinese Communist or Chi-Com web gear, and sported those. We had rucksacks just like GIs, carried normally in the field, but we had created an SOP, a standard operating procedure, on what items should be in there. Normally 2 Claymore mine kits, the anti-personnel mines, 100 rounds of belted ammunition for the M60 machine gun, trip flares, hand grenades, smoke grenades. By the time you got most of the munitions with the C4 explosive, the det cord that ties C4 together, blasting caps, etc., you're pretty well weighted down, so personal items and food, not to mention water, was not real high on the priority. So we traveled light and ate lean usually.
On our claymores always stayed in the top pack, the top flap of our rucksack. And we always carried with us 18-second fuse. So you could slide that fuse inside the claymore well, drop your rucksack if you're being chased, pull the fuse, and 9 seconds later it's going to blow. And of course you point it toward the bad guys, and once it blows, the backblast's going to explode everything in your rucksack as well. Had to use that one night. We got chased all night with flashlights and dogs. First time I ever seen that happen.
Special Operations Forces during the Vietnam War used a wide variety of weapons, often different from those in common use by the other United States Armed Forces. Often, Special Forces and other advisors of native forces used the same weapons as those they worked with to make ammunition supply easy and to express confidence in what the locals were issued. The standard issue rifles and machine guns of the American military often were either too heavy or too long to be employed effectively in the jungle. Older classic submachine guns from World War II, known as the Thompson and grease gun, became favorites because they were rugged and their .45 caliber pistol slugs had great stopping power.
Many special operator weapons in Vietnam were quite old, but they were very reliable. One of the most popular weapons was the M3 or M3A1 submachine gun, originally manufactured in World War II. They were affectionately known as the grease gun by the troops who carried them. It's a submachine gun, very simple. It's made out of tubing that's been welded together, the little welds and tack welds that hold it together. It's very cheaply made so they can make very large numbers of them. It's kind of the American Sten gun, if you're familiar with that. These weapons fired the same bullet as the .45 automatic pistol, the .45 ACP. The magazine would hold 32 rounds, would fire from semi-automatic, one shot at a time with a pull of the trigger, or full automatic. They're very interesting that they have a folding stock. Push the button here and pulled out the telescoping folding stock like this, which has the magazine loader and a bottle opener on the very end of it. If you pull it all the way out, the legs of this folding stock can be used as a cleaning rod to clean the barrel. The weapon has a closure here, a dust cover on it, that when opened like so, opens up the action. This would prevent any dirt, sand, or water from getting into it. What's unique about this later style of grease gun, or M3A1, is the fact that there's no external bolt handle to pull back here. Instead, the firer uses his finger to pull back the bolt. Quite simple. When loading in, it fires from the open bolt. Very simply. It fires a very slow rate of fire, 350 rounds per minute, which is about half the rate of a BAR or other weapons, which means it fires very slow, is very controllable. As long as you have a few drops of oil on that bolt, this weapon's going to fire.
Other newer 9mm submachine guns, such as the Swedish K, were also used because they were lighter, carried a smaller cartridge, and their foreign manufacture lent plausible deniability for special operators deep behind enemy lines.
Swedish K came in many variants, made in factories all around the world on contract. This particular one was used by one of many Arabic countries, maybe even by Israel. This magazine is called a coffin magazine. Instead of the usual 30-32 rounds you see in submachine guns, this holds 50 rounds, which gives you a tremendous spray of bullets in the jungle.
The Browning automatic rifle, or BAR, was favored by a few because it fired a long-range 30-06 round, delivered devastating bursts of automatic fire, and when stripped down, made a mobile light machine gun. Some preferred a shotgun with a shortened barrel, called a riot or trench gun, to spray large buckshot patterns into a jungle ambush, particularly at night.
One of the longest serving weapons in the U.S. military arsenal was the BAR, or Browning automatic rifle. First adopted during World War I, it was not withdrawn from U.S. military service until about 1960, then replaced by the M60 machine gun. Large numbers of the Browning automatic rifles, BARs, were still available all around the world, and particularly in the hands of not only the Army of the Republic of Vietnam, South Vietnamese forces, but the Viet Cong as well. They were spread all throughout theater. This is a fairly light weapon. They usually weigh between 21 and 22 pounds with a bipod on the end of it, but it works like a light machine gun when necessary. The ammunition for this is 30-06. Very powerful round, one that can break through the jungle and even through underbrush and light trees. It fires from a 20-round magazine, and so you don't fire too many rounds at once where we have to change the next one, and you can allow it to cool. Like all other automatic rifles and most machine guns, it would fire from an open bolt.
In addition to a shoulder weapon, a large percentage of warriors chose to add a Model 1911 Colt automatic pistol to their kit to provide a close-in weapon as a backup. Other pistols, either captured or traded for in-country, became common to obtain a lighter sidearm or when the supply system could not provide them.
Many special operators would carry two weapons. In addition to their rifle, shotgun, machine gun, they would also carry a pistol as a backup or secondary weapon. Perhaps the most popular was the 1911 A1 Colt pistol. First adopted in 1911 and carried through World War I, World War II, and Korea. The Vietnam version, most of them had been made during World War II. It fires a very large 45 caliber man-stopping round. The magazine holds 7 rounds. Many of the other 9mm weapons being carried by other forces around the world would carry more rounds, up to 13 at the time. But with a 45 caliber pistol round, it was a man stopper. One round would knock anyone down at close range.
The M79 single-barrel 40mm grenade launcher proved useful in placing precision explosives or smoke further than the operators could throw a grenade. Indeed, many carried an M79 with the buttstock shortened into a pistol grip to make it light and handy on long operations. Almost every man who entered the jungle also carried a large sheath knife as a crucial tool and silent weapon.
Our hand grenades were always bent. We always bend the pins and taped them. This way, a branch or something couldn't grab a pin and release the grenade and blow it up on you. Matter of fact, we learned that you could take an empty canteen pouch that we used to carry on our LCE, an empty canteen pouch, and you could put 4 frags in it. And so that's how some of the stuff that we would do as far as carrying equipment.
The M16 was introduced to many special operators after arrival as advisors in Vietnam and issued as a form of jungle carbine thought more suitable for the short Asian troops than heavy surplus rifles. Light, shorter than the M14 rifle, and firing an effective cartridge weighing much less than that of other battle rifles, the M16 quickly became a favorite for many who had to carry a selective fire weapon deep into the jungle.
Our magazines, the way we would load our M16 magazines, we'd load 2 ball, tracer, and the rest balls. And the reason is, of course, ball ammunition has got a lot more knockdown power than tracer ammunition does. But when you would see that tracer come out, you know you had 2 rounds left before it's time to change magazines. And we would literally practice during our rehearsal prior to our deploy, moving out on a mission. We would literally practice changing magazines. And that's why he kept you load bearing equipment hooked up in the front so you could throw your empty magazines down your shirt, because you didn't want to throw your magazines away. The old John Wayne stuff you see on the movies and Rambo or whatever, it'd take magazines together. We never did that. But the reason is there's too much weight on the magazine well. Next thing you know, you're walking through the woods and you only got 1 round. That's the round you got in the chamber, because the weight had just pulled down from the weapon. Plus, if you hit the ground, during movement techniques, you got all this dirt and everything else done pile up in the magazine. Of course, your weapon wouldn't fire. We used to take our M6, the guys that carried M16 would take a nail or something, nail a hole in it in the handguard, take an extended cleaning rod and go ahead and run it down it, tape it off. And the reason we would do that is in case, most of the time when a weapon malfunctioned in combat, in a firefight, it would double feed. So he ain't got time to be taking all this stuff apart, so all you gotta do is release the collection switch, break the shotgun down shotgun style, grab that rod, run it through it real quick, clear that misfire, load it back up, reinsert the pin, and you're back fine.
When the shortened submachine gun version, the XM-177 or CAR-15 was introduced, whole units opted to carry it and replaced most of the other weapons carried on the teams. With a shorter barrel and a collapsible stock, the CAR-15 was accurate enough and delivered full automatic fire when needed. In the next generation, the CAR-15 evolved into the M4 carbine, carried by most Army and Marine riflemen over 50 years later. While they were the weapons of the enemy, many special operators carried captured AK-47 assault rifles. Many point men of patrols and sometimes entire LRP teams carried an AK-47 because it confused enemy troops as to where the Americans were when they heard its distinctive firing sound instead of an American weapon when returning fire or in an ambush.
There were occasions that we initiated contact because the bad guys had either seen us or had initiated on us, which didn't happen often, but once was too much. And usually obviously get down, but usually my AK spraying the area with the first magazine I carried was in green tracers, which light up the sky, and at times that could have caused the bad guys to become confused, and there might be a lull in the firing, particularly giving one of my cambos would yell out at the bad guys firing what unit we were and try to get them to quit firing or hopefully stand up would have been better. And by that time, the M60 machine gun was right beside me, ready to engage. That didn't always work, but it was amusing sometimes to get fired at. Even if we initiated it, the bad guys thought it was friendly fire with the green tracers whizzing all over them. And that was successful sometimes.
The AK was easy to maintain in the dirt, mud, or sand, and ammunition could be obtained anywhere from an enemy supply. Indeed, the AK-47 bullet, also used by the SKS carbine and RPD machine gun, was a great intermediate range round that could reliably stop an enemy at combat ranges. Most leaders of special operations teams allowed individuals to choose what they preferred to carry on patrols, as long as they were confident in using it when it counted.
Another guy that usually walked right behind me was Dan Gadwall. We called him Lurp. He was a second tour man and for some reason preferred an M60 machine gun, all 23 pounds of it. I used to fuss at him. He would carry a 12, sometimes 800,000 round starter belt for his gun, which is exceedingly heavy amount of ammo. And when he had occasion to use it, he never got down. He just sat on his buttocks and put his big size 12 boots out in front of him and hosed the area down, seated on his buttocks, which was dangerous. But he was a valued team member.
Often troops would vary their weapons according to the type of operation they would conduct. Sometimes a sound suppressor on the end of a pistol was required to take out a sentry, guard dog, or to assassinate an enemy leader or cadre. Regardless of the tool used, the greatest weapons of the teams were their individual soldiers, Marines, SEALs, or airmen.
Dear Susan, the war is getting worse. The bastards are getting more and better weapons and making use of them. For the first week I was down here, the monotonous quiet of the river lulled us into a false sense of contentment that we had the VC on the run. The only way we could get him to fight was by going into his own backyard. We went into the backyard once too often. During the previous night, a VC platoon overran an outpost next to the riverbank and set up an ambush for our river patrol boats. The battle was terrible. Sue, I thought about keeping this whole thing secret until I got home, but I can't. This war is worse than any the U.S.'s fought to date. I am closer to life and death every day than the majority of men are on their last day on Earth. My values are formed around one axiom: life. Dick Strandberg, River Patrol, Section 533, Mekong Delta.
We were alerted to go into the coastal mountains to look for a VC unit that had ambushed one of the Echo recon teams from the 2nd 503rd Battalion. And not only had they all been killed, but their bodies had been mutilated, which is something pretty unusual. The NVA, the North Vietnamese Army, were regular soldiers and pretty well disciplined and they were good soldiers. The Viet Cong, they were just criminals. They were thugs. We didn't think much of them, and they were the kind that would do these kinds of things.
This was no ordinary mission. This was personal.
We really wanted to find this group, for revenge, if nothing else. So 2 teams were inserted into the area, one working from the south and one from the north, to meet in the middle in the area of operations where this Viet Cong unit was suspected to be.
Sometimes you find your quarry, and sometimes they just stumble into you.
The 2 teams met up at a spring where we refilled our canteens. We were taking a break and trying to figure out, where to proceed next. And at that time, one of our security guys signaled us to be quiet and lay low. They'd seen some movement. And 2 VC was seen on the trail, and our 2 team leaders decided to follow them. So they left the rest of us in position, and they went creeping up the trail, and keeping those 2 VC in sight, they followed them for a ways up the trail to where they turned off, and then followed them on, and they found the base camp where the Viet Cong unit, and there were 12 of them, a 12-man unit, in a big depression where they were hidden from sight from helicopters under canopy and below ground level. It was a really good hiding spot. It was a way station for them.
After about half an hour, the 2 team leaders returned with a plan on how to take them out.
We went up to the edge of the depression, and as we lay there, and the plan was everybody had a hand grenade, pulled a pin on the grenade and waited for our team leader to initiate the contact. So when we saw his grenade go through the air and you heard the ping of the spoon, we all threw ours. And as soon as we threw our grenades, we got up on a knee, let loose a magazine on full automatic down there into that depression at those 12 Viet Cong down there. And then got back down in the prone as all the grenades went off and changed magazines. And as soon as all the grenades went off, our magazines were changed, and we just stood up and we just walked down there and just wiped them all out. And we got 10, 2 of them got away. But I say it's one of the more satisfying missions for us because at that camp we found M16s with the serial numbers that matched the Echo Recon team, 173rd Zippo lighters with the names of some of those men, and that was a good mission.
For centuries, the Mekong Delta had been the water lifeline into the heart of Vietnam. a short hour's drive from Saigon, it was also the Viet Cong's backyard. In fact, Victor Charlie was so secure in the Delta that they used its villages as a rest area for battle-weary troops. Operation Blackhawk was planned to rob the communists of their safe haven. The mission of the operation was to search and destroy enemy encampments, capture his weapons, and crush his defenses.
Well, any given day seemed like a week, but we were involved mostly in basic guerrilla operations. Also considered what we would call pickups and paybacks. A pickup would be a rescue. A payback would be an assault, but it would be an assault by not an infantry outfit. It could be, as we were called back then, Sneaky Pete's. A basic guerrilla operation where you get into an area and you perform the assigned duty, which could be to put out anything from a supply, a source, a transportation source, or personnel.
The operations were fast, well-planned, and coordinated with American and Vietnamese Special Forces and Navy SEALs. Before a Blackhawk operation was launched, the insertion teams needed intelligence. This was gathered from two sources. One was from Kit Carson's. These were Viet Cong defectors who grew tired of life in the leech-infested swamps of the Delta and now operated as scouts for the Special Forces teams. The other source was from Stay-Behind teams. The Stay-Behind teams were like eagles that sat in a perch, surveying a specific area, waiting for enemy movement. When they spotted their prey, they would radio for support from an air-mobile Mike team to make a deadly strike from above or grab live intel sources.
That platoon was broken down. We broke it down into what we called 6-man Hawk teams, and their mission was reconnaissance. But quite often, because of the locations they were sent into, they became combat platoons and served the battalion commander's eyes and ears, but also helped him along with his body count. This particular platoon, one of my Hawk teams was out, and we were operating either 5 or 10-day missions. And they'd been out 4 days, and they contacted us and said they had some NVA in sight, and they were going to follow them for a ways. Well, that night, the NVAs, there was 5 NVA soldiers, and they sat down for the evening, and they all the NVA went to sleep. And my 6-man Hawk team got in their sleeping area and captured all 5 of them. So it was kind of a coup for the recon platoon to bring back 5 POWs from their activity.
One of the most successful of the Blackhawk operations occurred in early December of 1966. 2 platoons of Vietnamese Special Forces and their American Green Beret advisors attacked an estimated battalion of VC. The VC were taken by surprise by the fury of the Special Forces assault, but quickly recovered from the initial shock and struck back with a vengeance.
Hell was in session, stuff was flying and men were dying, and as we pulled back into this pod to set up a defensive position, we had a lot of casualties, a lot of dead people already, and the platoon that was up front got 8 up. They were just gone. And the recon guys gave suppressing fire and held out, but when you hit a hornet's nest with a stick, you're in trouble. And we'd walk right into their complex, so they had everything right there to deal with us.
The SF troops laid down suppressing fire as they got on their radios and called in air support from waiting fast movers and the always welcome gunships.
Thank God there was support on the horn, and the Captain Buca kept things coming. We had artillery support, jets were making passes, so I instantly crawled across, checking to make sure that they hadn't put any ordnance or booby traps in there to blow up the chopper when it landed in us, because there wasn't that much room.
Still, the VC fought on, lobbing grenades and spraying fire from their AK-47s.
It was an impossible situation, just shoulder to shoulder fighting and keep it by and keep them off. And when I heard those heavy machine guns, I thought, man, we're not even going to get choppers in here. They'll blow them out of the sky coming in to us.
As the battle raged, one desperate VC assault nearly broke the fragile Special Forces line.
I think I got hit probably an hour, hour and a half. No, it wasn't even that, actually. Probably the first hour. By the time I went across to check, make sure there was no ordnance or traps in there to blow us up with the chopper, I went over to the other side of the perimeter, and as I got there, I could see there was a sector of the perimeter that we hadn't got shoulder to shoulder on the far side. There were wounded people, and I looked down, and there was my buddy Clark Carell laying there with 2 AKs in his chest, and I hollered the first time. Nobody could hear me with the volume and the intensity of the fight. I hollered the second time, and you couldn't hear one another from where we are apart. And I looked down at my buddy Clark Carell laying there, and hell, if you're going to die, you might as well do it with style. I looked at my buddy and I said, boy, look at you, just like a C license holder. You're a lower jumper than me in the free fall scale. And I said, just like a C license holder, you let him kill you. And he, bless his heart, the pain he was in and dying, he still managed to get a soft smile. And when he did, his lips parted and that blood come running out. And I thought, then I felt like an idiot. Yeah, that's it, make your buddy laugh and die. The third time I hollered, it was almost as if everybody had changed magazines and stopped shooting. There was a little lull enough where I hollered. I said, we need some help over here. There's a hole in the perimeter.
A lieutenant's command to help fill up a position saved Fitzwater's life.
And at that time, my lieutenant grabbed 3 of the guys in the squad, and he said, get over there and help Sergeant Rock on the other side of the perimeter. And as he was pointing to me to come and help for the position, the grenade came in and blew me up. But on the other side where I was looking up, and one of the guys over there on the other side of my buddy laying there, his eyes got big. And Cunningham, one of the recon guys in the recon platoon with Carell, we both ended up laying down over him, not knowing if there was somebody coming through, they needed to shoot him. We couldn't turn around, so get out of the way so that guy could shoot. And as we laid down and covered him, the grenade blew up. And my lieutenant says to this day, and the guys that were, they all watched it, and they said, damn, Rock, we don't know how you made that. That should have killed you. We watched you die with that frag. Everybody was on the ground like a snake. I mean, you couldn't raise your head above. You're going to get a hole in it. And I, with the shock and where I was at, my state of mind, that concussion, I stood up, held out my arm. I'm standing up. And I'm looking at the blood funneling out over this eye, and I'm just, oh, man. And about that time, one of the recon medics, Washburn, he said, damn it, Fitz, he said, lay down so I can put a tourniquet on you, bleeding to death.
Finally, after 5 hours of non-stop battle, the spent communist battalion vanished into the jungle, leaving behind 75 dead and most of their heavy equipment and supplies. The SF warriors had intercepted an enemy force that was planning to overrun a nearby friendly village. Their action not only saved the village, but also took the enemy strike force out of the war for many months. As the Blackhawk operations began to break the communist hold on the Delta, the war in the Highlands was heating up, and America was about to throw more fuel on the fire. Awakening to the sound of explosions, Rear Admiral Kenneth K. Vett, commander of U.S. Naval Forces Vietnam, moved to the rooftop of his rented house to witness a dazzling display of rockets and flares lighting the Saigon night sky. All around him, the sound of battle in the early hours of January 31st, 1968, heralded the arrival of the 1968 Tet Offensive. Armed with automatic weapons and hand grenades, the Admiral and his housemates waited for the assault on their quarters they knew were coming. During the remaining hours of darkness, Veth kept informed of events by listening to military police and other tactical communications on the radio. Since he spent the night on the roof of his house, he was unable to direct operations from his headquarters. The Admiral was not the only senior commander caught napping. As early as July 1967, the communist leadership and military strategists in North Vietnam were preparing their biggest blow against the forces in the South. Ho Chi Minh and General Vo Nguyen Giap had decided to stage a series of attacks all across South Vietnam. Their intention was to overwhelm the South Vietnamese military and U.S. allies, causing the collapse of the South Vietnamese government. The enemy used a number of feints and deceptions to decoy the U.S. forces, as well as the U.S. government. With offers to go to the peace table diverting the attention of President Johnson, attacks such as the siege of Khe Sanh forced the military to concentrate their forces in the countryside and away from the cities. At the same time, NVA forces and supplies were moved down the logistic track of the Ho Chi Minh Trail and the Mekong River. Stockpiles were built up in the safe areas of Laos and Cambodia. Caches in South Vietnam were filled and more were established. As many as 84,000 Viet Cong and NVA troops were in position to conduct the campaign, scheduled to coincide with the Lunar New Year in 1968. U.S. operational commanders generally placed a low emphasis on intelligence collection, and it was only in isolated cases that field commanders were successfully given intelligence briefs and then meaningfully debriefed after an operation. Reports of increased foot traffic from Laos and Cambodia were ignored. Analysis of such information would have assisted the field force in interdicting enemy forces. Rather than utilizing their special warfare skills for intelligence purposes, operating forces often misuse the SEALs, Rangers, LRPs, and SOG as covert infantry units. Their abilities to conduct infiltration and reconnaissance, as well as to run agent nets, were often ignored in the rush to employ them in disrupting and destroying specific enemy targets. But if you attacked, your cover was blown. The enemy knew you were there.
The thing with the ambushes, it was pretty tricky. Usually, it was a 3 to 5 man element that would come into your kill zone where you prepared an ambush on a trail. You blow claymores on them and then get up and finish them off with your rifles, check bodies, check equipment, get any intelligence value you could, and then move to a landing zone for extraction, because once you were compromised, once the enemy knew where you were or that you were in the area, then you were pulled out.
American crews were affected by pressure to produce results. An advisor who served in the Mekong Delta observed, "American PBR crews will stop anybody and take in 50 people and call them suspects if they feel that the pressure is on them to come up with some suspects." Despite numerous warnings from the LRPs and SEAL teams in the field, the intensity, coordination, and timing of the Tet Offensive surprised the American intelligence community in Vietnam. In addition to a flawed intelligence collection effort, command misunderstood critical information, resulting in American forces being improperly deployed and surprised when Saigon and numerous other targets were attacked on January 31st. During the planned Tet truce, Task Force 117, Riverine Force, was scheduled to deploy into western Din Thuong and easternIen Phong provinces, where it was expected to interdict intensified enemy resupply efforts. Captain Robert S. Salzer, the commander of the Riverine Force, later recalled,
"It was a show-and-tell operation. There was no reason whatsoever to be there. We went up there along the skinniest canal we could, till we ran out of water completely. Then we plowed through the mud some. Nothing much happened. There was no reason for anything to happen. The Viet Cong were all the way to the east of us by this time. So much for what American intelligence thought they knew."
On the morning of January 30th, the task force received word that the Tet truce was canceled. Offensive operations resumed, but infantry units remained near canals for rapid redeployment. The next morning, the situation in the Delta deteriorated quickly as enemy forces attacked Mai To, Ben Tre, Khe Le, Kai Bay, and Vien Long.
We began to hear rumors that things weren't going quite so well in our splendid isolation. Bill Cowtown, who was a brigadier general, then flew in saying, "My God, it's Pearl Harbor over again."
A Riverine Army company was airlifted to Vinh Long to support Arvin forces at 1810 on the 31st. Another company was flown to reinforce the defenses of the permanent Riverine base at Dong Tam near Mai To. During the night, the majority of the task force withdrew to Dong Tam, where they arrived before dawn despite enemy harassment, including an ineffective ambush. In the fiery glow of nearby fighting, the Riverine force was resupplied and moved out at daybreak. At 1550 on February 1st, these forces were hurled into battle in Mai To and subsequently at Vinh Long and Ben Tre. In the end, the Riverine task force was credited with saving the Delta. Meanwhile, in anticipation of increased enemy infiltration of supplies from Cambodia, TF-116 River Patrol Force had deployed 9 PBRs, patrol boats river, to the Cambodian border region. Along with the boats came 8 platoons of SEAL Team 2. The SEALs were based at the U.S. Army Special Forces camp at Chau Dock on the upper Basok River in the northwest of the Mekong Delta. They were ordered to Chau Dock to observe a possible large enemy crossing into South Vietnam. 8 was operating with mercenaries from the area, mostly Cambodians and Chinese. What 8 did not realize was that the crossing had already occurred, and the 13-man team was picked up by a company of NVA regulars. The outgunned Platoon 8 was forced to form a strategic withdrawal. The fight was intense. The repositioning of PBRs to Chau Dock may have had little impact on infiltration, but the vessels proved crucial in repelling a major ground attack on the city during Tet. Elsewhere during Tet, TF-116 units engaged enemy forces at Mai To, Ben Tre, Vinh Long, Sa Dec, the Saigon area, and the LCU landing craft utility ramp at Hue. During Tet, market-time forces became engaged in a number of firefights involving sampans and provided naval gunfire support to forces ashore. Harbor defense patrols, Operation Stable Door, engaged enemy swimmers during the early hours of January 31st, but were unable to prevent damage to the bow of the Norwegian tanker Pelican in Cam Ranh Bay.
Warden X-ray, 1, this is Warden X-ray. I have sampan crossing up ahead. Break, I will attempt to intercept. Take off.
Despite extensive commitments in support of Allied forces ashore during the Tet fighting, TF-115 thwarted 4 enemy trawlers at the end of February, attempting to simultaneously infiltrate supplies into the Republic of Vietnam. Despite the fact that the LRPs and SEAL teams were playing a major role in every command in Vietnam, the rest of the Army was still not forming similar units. As a result, on February 18, 1968, the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division, one of the last units to arrive in Vietnam, did so without a recon organization. President Lyndon Johnson deployed the 82nd Airborne with only 30 hours' notice in response to the Communist Tet Offensive that began on January 30th. The brigade was immediately committed to the meat grinder battle raging in the streets of the imperial city of Hue. The initial assembly area for the 3rd Brigade was a new base with an inadequate defensive perimeter and no security system. The brigade commander recognized the need for LRPs as soon as he landed in country and saw the position his troops would operate from. Volunteers were selected from throughout the brigade and assigned to the headquarters company's provisional LRP platoon. Within days after landing in the Republic of Vietnam, the newly formed 3rd Brigade LRPs were in the jungles and paddies, providing security and gathering critical intelligence. Fighting in Vietnam took place from the steamy jungles to the mountains and through the Mekong Delta. Neither densely populated cities or villages were spared, but some of the most intense and terrifying combat for the hearts and minds of the population took place underground. It was war in the 4th dimension. The extensive tunnel complexes dug by the Viet Minh to hide troops and supplies from Japanese and French troops over a period of 20 years had been turned by the communists into underground cities and fortresses. Because of the narrow, dark confines of the hand-dug dirt pipes, the tunnel war in the shadows was fought not with jets, artillery, and armored sweeps. Rather, it was a face-to-face struggle on hands and knees between two men with a flashlight and a pistol or a knife. One of the most effective ways humans hid things before the invention of the metal detector was putting items in a hole and covering it up. The tunnel complexes dug in Vietnam became underground cities with barracks, classrooms, hospitals, arsenals, even armories for producing weapons and other equipment. They also served as hidden trenches or bunkers for protection from artillery or bombing. Units could hide and rest in the daytime and crawl out to attack villages or enemy posts under cover of darkness. Tunnel complexes in remote locations were used to prepare units before forced marches into combat. Other sets of tunnels were located as close as possible to enemy positions to hide and concentrate forces in concealed assault positions. Tunnel complexes were constructed in firm soil with multiple hidden entrances, bamboo tubes to allow air to flow, and with multiple rooms or chambers off the main passage. To prevent discovery, the openings and approaches were cleverly disguised and usually booby-trapped. If the entrance was entered by a stranger, explosives, pungy stake pits, and even poisonous snakes and insects would kill or injure. Often guards would take turns inside the entrance with a bamboo spear to surprise an intruder from a dark corner or hidden chamber. While a grenade or flamethrower would kill those near the entrance, most tunnels were constructed with a zigzag path to reduce the threat from outside weapons. With multiple ways to escape, any attacker would have to find and seal all ways out. Early in the American involvement in the war, brave volunteers actually entered the damp, dark hell of the tunnels to destroy the threat from within. Quickly named tunnel rats, these men had to be fairly small, flexible and strong, and incredibly brave. At first, they were soldiers in the infantry units, conducting sweeps and discovering the tunnel entrances. They stripped down to their underwear, turned a cap on their head backwards, and entered the darkness on their elbows and knees, with a GI-issued angled flashlight in one hand and a Colt 45 automatic in the other. After their eyes and bodies adjusted to the particular tunnel, they slithered like snakes on their bellies in spaces built for smaller Asian men. This was not war in the shadows, but war in the dark. As the size of the tunnel problem became known, the American and other Allied troops developed special techniques for locating the entrances and then operating underground. Sympathetic villagers afraid of bombing and shelling often pointed out the location of tunnel entrances, and turncoat Viet Cong prisoners were questioned to give away underground secrets. As the war progressed, specially trained combat engineer soldiers were issued special equipment to help them win the war below ground. Special miners-type caps or helmets with lights attached on top, as well as light switches activated by biting a bulb on a tube, allowed the tunnel rats to turn spotlights on and off, hands-free. Many tunnel rats preferred revolvers and other pistols with less flash and recoil, or equipped with sound suppressors, rather than the powerful government .45 automatic. They requested from home, had them issued, or traded other troops for less powerful pistols to fight within feet of a surprised enemy underground. Gas masks were worn or carried because tear gas was often pumped into a tunnel entrance, or air pipes to force out the occupants. While technology helped those entering the tunnel systems, the war underground was usually vicious and pitted one lightly armed human against another. Deep in the tunnels, they could neither run nor hide without someone grabbing their ankles and pulling them out slowly and while defenseless. Though tunnel systems were everywhere in South Vietnam, the more extensive and famous were those of the Cu Chi region. Located about 20 miles north of the capital at Saigon, There were perhaps hundreds of miles of tunnels and underground bunkers in a man-made honeycomb complex that served as an important underground headquarters for the Viet Cong. Though it was obvious that the Communists operated freely in a wide radius from the tunnels, the Allies never realized the size and importance of the complex until a museum was opened for tourists after the war. By their own admission, the Viet Cong greatly feared and admired the tunnel rats. These seemingly crazy, compact, and fearless men took the war directly to the Communist underground hiding places and showed up suddenly to discover their secrets deep underground. Massive B-52 arc-like formation bombing raids, napalm, heavy explosive charges, and tanks and armored personnel carrier tracks could shake the earth. But it took a brave man with a flashlight and a pistol on elbows and knees to enter their most secret hideouts.